Hi, I'm Peter Carney from City Food Growers. This morning I'll be talking to you about growing bush beans and climbing beans. I'm in my vegetable garden in southeast Queensland. Growing beans are a really wonderful addition to any vegetable garden. They're not too hard to grow and you get an amazing amount of production for a small space. You can even grow them in pots, and this is quite a large vegetable garden, but you certainly don't need this amount of space to grow a lot of beans. So first let's look at bush beans. This row here has about 30 bush bean plants in it, and they're not very old plants. In fact, these ones at this end are quite small, and what's very interesting about bean plants is that they start fruiting when they're really young. I mean, look, this plant here is really not very big, and we're already harvesting from it. We harvested from it last night, and these are beautiful beans here. This one is still fairly young, but they're unusual plants, beans, because you can harvest from them when they're very young, and then they keep growing for about 60 days, sometimes more, and you can harvest from them the whole time. So this plant will grow to probably this high and about this wide, and on this tiny little plant there's 6 beans. So when it gets this big, imagine how many beans will be on it. And we have a lot of plants here. So with a small part of your garden, even if you've got a pot, you can get a lot of beans. One of the things that I find in growing these beans is as they start to get a little higher, they can get a little wobbly as they grow, because they fruit so early, the plant gets a little unstable. So I think when you see that happening, it's important to mound the plants, and I tend to mound them with compost because that really gives the plants a nice kick along as they're growing. So just be very wary as they start to grow up and fruit that you need to make them stable. So yeah, beautiful plant really. Not too many things attack these, not too many diseases attack bush beans. We've got all the diseases listed in our website, which with the organic treatments, and all the different varieties of bush beans. With climbing beans, we have a climbing bean frame here, and there's probably 15 or 20 climbing bean plants, and here you can see these beans here, which there's a nice bean there, and we also harvested some of these last night. These can produce even more in a small space than a bush bean because they go upwards. So if you're growing climbing beans, make sure that you put your steady climbing frame in place before you plant, because if you put it in afterwards you'll disturb the plants and the roots. So put it in place, and as you can see, this frame is certainly not high tech. Some bamboo and chicken wire and some string, and as the plants are growing up, just encourage them to go onto the wire, and you'll find in no time that they'll be fruiting, and this whole wire will eventually be completely covered with these plants, so we will get an amazing amount of beans out of these plants. And so similar thing, you could have a pot, you can have a container garden and have a climbing frame on it and grow lots and lots of beans. And these grow in a similar way to the bush beans. They fruit very young and they just keep fruiting and flowering. So beautiful plants to grow in a small space. The climate that's needed for the beans, in this part of the world where I am, which is subtropical, they tend to grow best in spring and then in late summer into autumn. But all the ideal planting times for the beans are on our website. So I strongly suggest having beans in your garden. there are many varieties of beans, not just these types. I mean, we have Madagascar beans in our garden, we have scarlet runner beans, we have lots of different types of broad beans, many beans, so they're a great crop in any garden. And they're also a legume plant, so they do help the soil. So that's it for our movie today, and I really hope you enjoy your beans. Thanks, Peter Carney from City Food Growers.